Vela walked through the busy marketplace with her hand resting on her weapon. Her scales caught the artificial light of the station, gleaming dark green against her uniform. She was tall, much taller than most creatures here. Her yellow eyes scanned the crowd with practiced ease. She had been a security officer on Nexus 7 for 8 years now. The massive space station floated between star systems, a place where aliens from dozens of worlds came to trade and talk. Vela knew every corridor, every shadow, every place where trouble could hide. Today, trouble was in the commercial district. 2 voices rose above the crowd. Vela's sensitive hearing picked up the argument before she saw it. She pushed through the gathered aliens, her powerful body clearing a path easily. In the center of the crowd stood 2 figures. One was a Krovan, a blue-skinned trader with 4 arms. The other was human. The human was a merchant named Day. He was short compared to Vela, with dark hair and skin that looked fragile. He held a datapad and was pointing at numbers on the screen. His voice was loud and angry. "You agreed to the price," Day said. "The contract is clear." The Krovan clicked his mandibles in frustration. "The goods were damaged. I will not pay full price for damaged goods." "There was no damage when they left my warehouse," Day argued. "You damaged them after delivery." "I have the inspection reports." Vela felt her lip curl in disgust. Of course a human was at the center of this. They were always causing problems. Always arguing, always lying, always trying to cheat someone. She had seen it 100 times before. She stepped forward, her shadow falling over both traders. "Enough," she said. Her voice was deep and carried authority. "You are disturbing the peace." The Krovan bowed his head respectfully. "Officer Vela, this human is trying to steal from me." "That's not true," Day protested. "I have proof." Vela grabbed Day's arm. Her grip was strong enough to make him wince. "Come with me, now." She dragged him away from the crowd. Day stumbled, trying to keep up with her long strides. She took him to a security checkpoint and shoved him against the wall. Not hard enough to injure him, but hard enough to make her point clear. "Officer, I didn't do anything wrong," Day said. He rubbed his arm where she had gripped it. "I have documentation. I can prove—" "I do not want to hear your excuses," Vela said coldly. "Your kind always has excuses. Always has explanations. But I know what humans are really like." She saw the hurt flash across Day's face, but she did not care. She ran a background check on her datapad. His record was clean. No arrests, no complaints. She had no legal reason to hold him, and she knew it. "You are free to go," she said finally. "But stay out of trouble. Next time I will not be so gentle." Day looked at her for a long moment. She expected anger or fear. Instead, his expression was sad. "Not all humans are the same, officer," he said quietly. Then he walked away. Vela watched him go. She felt no guilt, no shame. She knew the truth about humans. They were reckless and careless. They valued profit over honor. They lied and cheated and destroyed. She knew this because 5 years ago they had killed her brother. His name was Kren. He had been young and strong, full of dreams. He had taken a job with a human mining company on a frontier planet. They promised good pay and safe working conditions. 6 months later, Vela received a message saying there had been an accident. A tunnel collapsed. Kren died instantly, along with 12 other workers. The human company said it was equipment failure. They said no one was at fault. They paid compensation to the families and closed the mine. But Vela had investigated on her own. She found evidence of cut corners and ignored safety warnings. The humans had known the tunnels were unstable. They had let the workers dig anyway because stopping would cost money. No one was punished. No human faced justice. They had covered it all up with paperwork and lawyers and lies. Since that day, Vela hated all humans. She did not trust them. She did not respect them. As far as she was concerned, they were a disease in the galaxy. The next morning, Vela reported for duty at the security headquarters. Her commander, Thex, called her into his office. Thex was also Andraxian, older than Vela with silver streaks in his scales. He had been her mentor for years. "I have an assignment for you," Thex said. He tapped his datapad. "There have been malfunctions in the environmental systems. Small things, but concerning. I need you to escort an engineer through the maintenance tunnel so he can inspect the equipment." "Of course, Commander," Vela said. "When do I leave?" "In 1 hour. The engineer's name is Hyun. He works in environmental systems." Vela nodded and turned to leave. Then Thex's words registered in her mind. Hyun, that was a human name. She turned back. Commander, is this engineer human? Yes, Thex said. He did not look up from his work. Is that a problem? I request a different assignment, Vela said carefully. Perhaps another officer would be better suited. No. Thex finally looked at her. His yellow eyes were stern. You are the officer I am assigning. Your personal feelings do not matter. You will do your duty, Vela wanted to argue. She wanted to explain why she could not work with a human, but she knew the look in Thex's eyes. The conversation was over. Yes, Commander, she said quietly. 1 hour later, Vela stood in the maintenance bay. The room was full of equipment and tools. Pipes ran along the walls carrying water and air and power throughout the massive station. The air smelled like metal and cleaning chemicals. She heard footsteps and turned. A human man walked toward her. He was young, with black hair and dark eyes. He wore a standard engineer's uniform and carried a bag of tools. His movements were quiet and careful. Officer Vela? He asked. His voice was calm and professional. I'm Hyun. Thank you for escorting me today. Vela said nothing. She just stared at him with cold eyes. Hyun waited for a response. When none came, he cleared his throat. Right, well, shall we begin? I need to access Junction Point 7 in the lower maintenance level. Follow me, Vela said. Her voice was flat and unfriendly. She turned and walked toward the tunnel entrance without checking if he was following. They walked in silence through the corridors. The maintenance tunnels were narrow and dimly lit. Pipes and cables ran overhead. Their footsteps echoed in the confined space. Hyun carried his diagnostic equipment and scanned the various systems as they walked. He took readings and made notes on his datapad. He did not try to make conversation. He seemed focused entirely on his work. Vela watched him from the corner of her eye. She expected him to complain about the heat or the tight spaces. She expected him to be clumsy or careless. But Hyun moved through the tunnels with practiced ease. He knew exactly what he was looking for. They reached Junction Point 7. Hyun knelt and opened an access panel. He pulled out diagnostic tools and began running tests. Vela stood nearby, her arms crossed, watching him work. Hyun frowned at his readings. That's odd, he muttered. What is it? Vela asked. She tried to sound bored, but she was curious despite herself. These readings are strange, Hyun said. He tapped his screen. The thermal regulators have been tampered with. Someone has been... The explosion hit like a giant's fist. The tunnel shook violently. Vela was thrown against the wall. Lights flickered and died. Emergency lights came on, bathing everything in red. Alarms screamed through the corridors. Then, with a grinding metal sound, bulkheads slammed shut. Heavy doors sealed the tunnel section. The sound echoed in the sudden silence that followed. Vela pushed herself to her feet. Her head rang from the impact. What happened? She demanded. Hyun was already back at his equipment. His hands moved quickly over the controls. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. Explosion in Section 4. The station has sealed this area automatically. He paused, reading the data. His expression grew darker. We're trapped. The emergency lights painted everything red. Vela could smell smoke in the air. Her ears were still ringing from the explosion. She looked down the tunnel and saw that the bulkhead door had sealed them off completely. The heavy metal door was designed to contain disasters. It would take rescue teams hours to cut through. Hyun was typing rapidly on his datapad. His face was lit by the screen's glow. I'm trying to access the communication system, he said, but it's not responding. The explosion must have damaged the relays in this section. Vela activated her own communicator. Static hissed in her ear. She tried different channels. All of them were dead. They were sealed in with no way to call for help. How long until rescue? Vela demanded. Hyun checked his station maps. Standard procedure for a bulkhead breach is 12 hours. They have to secure the damaged areas first. Then they can start cutting through to reach survivors. 12 hours, Vela repeated. She looked around the tunnel. It was a small space, maybe 30 meters long. Do we have enough air? Hyun pulled up environmental data on his pad. He was quiet for a moment, reading the numbers. When he spoke again, his voice was tight. We have a problem. The life support system for this section was damaged in the explosion. Oxygen levels are dropping. At the current rate, we have maybe 6 hours of breathable air. 6 hours. They would suffocate 6 hours before rescue arrived. Before Vela could respond, she heard voices. 2 other people emerged from a side corridor, coughing in the smoky air. One was a human woman wearing a medical uniform. The other was a young Krovan with blue skin and frightened eyes. The human woman saw them and hurried over. Thank goodness. I'm Nari, medical officer. Are either of you injured? Vela shook her head. Hyun said he was fine. The Krovan technician was breathing hard, all four of his arms trembling. What happened? Is it an attack? Are we going to die? Calm down, Vela ordered. Her voice was sharp and commanding. Panic will only make things worse. But even as she spoke, a new smell reached her sensitive nose. It was bitter and chemical. She looked down the tunnel and saw green vapor seeping from a broken pipe. Her blood went cold, coolant leak. Hyun said quietly. He had seen it too. That's toxic coolant. If it fills this space, we'll die in minutes. The Krovan technician made a sound of pure terror. He backed against the wall, his eyes wide. We're trapped. We're going to die. No one is dying, Vela snapped. But inside, she was calculating their chances. They had 6 hours of air, but the coolant leak would kill them much faster. Maybe 3 hours before the vapor concentration became lethal, and they were sealed behind a door that would take 12 hours to breach. The math was simple and terrible. They would not survive. There has to be a way out, Nari said. She was trying to stay calm, but Vela could hear the fear in her voice. Can we seal the leak? Hyun was already examining the broken pipe through his equipment scanner. The leak is in the next chamber. The valve controls are in there too. If we could reach them, we could shut off the flow and seal this section. Then let's go, Vela said. It's not that simple. Hyun pointed at his scanner. The chamber is already full of coolant vapor. Anyone who enters will die within seconds. We'd need a full environmental suit. They all looked around the tunnel. There were emergency supply lockers on the walls, but Vela already knew what was inside them. Basic medical supplies, fire extinguishers, emergency rations, no environmental suits. Those were stored in the main security stations, not in the maintenance tunnels. The Krovan technician slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor. This is your fault, he said suddenly. He pointed at Hyun with one shaking arm. You humans are always causing trouble. You probably sabotaged the station yourselves. Vela felt a surge of agreement. Yes, humans were always at the center of disasters. They were careless and dangerous. But then she looked at Hyun's face. He was not angry at the accusation. He looked thoughtful, studying his equipment readings. This wasn't an accident, Hyun said quietly. Look at these readings. The thermal regulators were modified weeks ago. Someone planned this. They wanted to cause an explosion during peak station hours, when the most people would be affected. Pirates? Nari asked. Maybe. Or terrorists. Hyun scrolled through data. There have been attacks before. Groups that don't want humans in the galactic community. They call themselves the Purity Front. Vela remembered the reports. The Purity Front was a radical organization made up of various alien species. They believed humans were too primitive and violent to join the civilized galaxy. They had bombed human embassies and sabotaged human ships. Vela had never paid much attention to them. Part of her had agreed with their message even if she did not approve of their methods. Now their actions had trapped her in a tunnel to die. It doesn't matter who did this, Vela said harshly. What matters is surviving. Is there any way to reach the control valve? Hyun was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the broken pipe, then at the emergency lockers, then at his own equipment bag. Vela could see his mind working, calculating possibilities. There might be a way, he said slowly. It's dangerous. Very dangerous. But it might work. Tell us, Vela ordered. Hyun pulled supplies from the emergency locker. Plastic sheeting, repair tape, chemical sealant. He spread them on the floor. I can make a temporary environmental suit from these materials. It won't be perfect, but it might give someone enough protection to enter the chamber, reach the valve, and seal the leak. How long would the suit last? Ari asked. Maybe 60 seconds, maybe less. Hyun looked at each of them. The coolant will eat through the plastic quickly. Whoever goes in will have to work fast. The Krovan technician shook his head violently. That's suicide. We should wait for rescue. There won't be a rescue if we're already dead, Hyun said simply. The coolant will kill us in a few hours. This is our only chance. Vela studied the makeshift suit Hyun was describing. It was clever, she had to admit. Using the materials at hand to solve an impossible problem. It was very human. But it was also insane. Who will wear it? Nari asked. Hyun picked up the plastic sheeting. I will. I know the valve systems. I can work quickly. No, Vela said immediately. Then she stopped, surprised at her own reaction. Why did she care if the human wanted to risk his life? A few hours ago, she would have been happy to see him suffer. But now, looking at his calm face and steady hands, she felt something different. Respect, maybe, or at least recognition that he was willing to die to save the others. You're too valuable, Vela said, changing her argument. If the suit fails and you die, we have no other engineer. I should go. I'm stronger. I can work faster. Hyun shook his head. Strength doesn't matter here. You don't know the valve systems. You'd waste time trying to figure out the controls. By the time you understood what to do, the suit would fail. He was right, and Vela knew it. She hated that he was right. Then teach me, she said. Show me what to do. Hyun looked surprised. Then he nodded. All right, come here. For the next 20 minutes, Hyun showed Vela the valve controls on his datapad. He explained which switches to pull, which buttons to press, which sequence to follow. Vela memorized it all. Her mind was sharp and trained. She could do this. But as Hyun explained, she watched him work on the makeshift suit. His hands moved with precision, sealing every gap, reinforcing every weak point. He was not just smart. He was skilled. He understood his tools and his environment in a way that came from years of experience. Vela realized something uncomfortable. If she went into that chamber, she would probably fail. She would waste time, make mistakes, and die before completing the task. But if Hyun went, he had a real chance of success. The human was better suited for this than she was. In this moment, in this situation, he was more capable than her. It was a bitter truth to swallow. I'm going, Hyun said, finishing the suit. He had created a crude helmet from a transparent plastic container. It looked fragile and temporary. Because it was, Hyun, you don't have to do this, Nari said softly. Her eyes were wet. Yes, I do. Hyun smiled at her. Besides, I'm better at doing things than sitting around worrying. This is what I'm good at. He looked at Vela. If I don't come back, wait here. Don't try to escape through the coolant. The rescue teams will reach you eventually. Promise me, Vela wanted to argue. She wanted to take the suit and do this herself. But she knew it would be foolish pride, and pride was worthless if they were all dead. I promise, she said. Hyun nodded. He pulled on the makeshift suit and sealed it as best he could. Then he picked up his tools and walked toward the chamber entrance. The green vapor was thick now, pouring through the broken pipes like a toxic river. Vela watched him go. This human, this creature she had despised just hours ago, was walking into certain death to save them all. She felt something crack inside her chest. Something old and hard that had been there since her brother died. Hyun reached the chamber door. He looked back one more time and gave them a small wave. Then he opened the door and stepped into the poisonous green fog. Vela pressed her face against the small viewport in the chamber door. The green vapor was so thick she could barely see inside. Somewhere in that toxic fog, Hyun was searching for the valve controls. Beside her, Nari gripped the edge of the door frame. Her knuckles were white. The Krovan technician stood behind them, all four arms wrapped around himself. How long has it been? Nari whispered. 20 seconds, Vela said. She was counting in her head. Every second felt like an hour. Through the viewport, she saw movement, a shape in the fog. Hyun appeared for a moment, then vanished again. He was moving along the wall, feeling his way through the chamber. The makeshift suit was already starting to dissolve. She could see holes forming in the plastic. Come on, Nari breathed. Come on, Hyun. 30 seconds, 40. The suit would fail soon. Vela wanted to look away, but she forced herself to watch. If Hyun was brave enough to enter that death trap, she was brave enough to witness it. Then she heard a metallic clang. The hissing sound of the coolant leak changed pitch. It grew quieter. The green vapor stopped pouring through the pipes. He did it, the Krovan technician shouted. He sealed it! The vapor began to thin. Slowly, the chamber became visible again, and there, collapsed against the wall, was Hyun. He was not moving. No, Nari said. She grabbed the door handle. Vela caught her arm. Wait, the vapor is still toxic. Give it a minute to clear. It was the longest minute of Vela's life. She watched Hyun's body, looking for any sign of movement. Nothing. He lay completely still. When the vapor had thinned enough, Vela opened the door. She ran into the chamber, her powerful legs carrying her across the space in 3 strides. She grabbed Hyun and lifted him easily. His body was light in her arms. She carried him back to the tunnel. Nari was already preparing medical supplies. Put him down gently, Vela laid Hyun on the floor. His face was red and blistered. The coolant had burned through the suit and touched his skin. His breathing was shallow and irregular. Nari worked quickly, treating the chemical burns with spray bandages and injecting him with medicine. The burns are bad, but not fatal. He'll survive. Will he wake up? Vela asked. She was surprised by how much he cared about the answer. Soon, I hope. The medicine should help. Nari continued working, her hands steady despite the stress. He saved our lives, yes, Vela thought. He did. Hyun's eyes opened 20 minutes later. He groaned in pain, then tried to sit up. Nari pushed him back down gently. Stay still. You're injured. Did it work? Hyun asked. His voice was rough. Is the leak sealed? Yes, Vela said. You sealed it. The chamber is safe now. Hyun closed his eyes in relief. Then he winced as the pain hit him again. How long until rescue? Vela checked her chronometer. About 9 hours. But we still have the oxygen problem. Sealing the leak bought us time, but the life support in this section is still failing. Hyun forced himself to sit up despite Nari's protests. He pulled his datapad from his belt. The screen was cracked but still working. There's a secondary control junction 3 sections away. If I can reach it and reroute power to the atmospheric processors, we might be able to restore life support. You're not going anywhere, Nari said firmly. You can barely sit up. Then tell me what to do, Vela said. I'll go. Hyun looked at her with surprise. Then he nodded. All right, but you'll have to take the maintenance tunnels. The regular corridors are sealed by the bulkheads. He pulled up a map on his datapad. The maintenance tunnels formed a network through the station's infrastructure. They were narrow passages designed for repair work, not for travel. Some of them were barely large enough for a human to crawl through. These tunnels will be tight, Hyun warned. Especially for you. Vela looked at the map. He was right. The tunnels were small. Her larger body would have trouble fitting. But what choice did they have? If they stayed here, they would suffocate slowly. I've done difficult things before, Vela said. I can handle it. They gathered what supplies they could carry. Emergency lights, water, medical supplies, Hyun's tools and datapad. Then Vela led them toward the access tunnel entrance. The tunnel was even smaller than she expected. She had to remove her armor to fit through the opening. Without it, she felt exposed and vulnerable. The tunnel walls pressed close on either side. Stay together, Vela ordered. Move carefully. She went first, crawling through the narrow space. Behind her came Nari, then the Krovan technician, and finally Hyun, moving slowly because of his injuries. The tunnel was dark except for their emergency lights. Pipes and cables ran along the ceiling close enough to touch. The air smelled like metal and oil. Every few meters, Vela had to squeeze through tight spaces where support beams crossed the passage. Her muscles strained with the effort. This was humiliating. She was a warrior, trained for combat and security. But here, in these cramped human-sized tunnels, her strength meant nothing. She was too big, too bulky, too awkward. Behind her, she could hear Hyun moving with practiced ease. He had probably crawled through tunnels like this hundreds of times during his maintenance work. The space that challenged her was normal for him. They crawled for what felt like hours. Vela's body ached from the constant squeezing and stretching. Sweat ran down her scales. She wanted to rest, but she pushed forward. They could not afford to stop. Then disaster struck. Vela squeezed through a junction point where 2 tunnels crossed. A support beam caught on her utility belt. She pushed forward. The belt held. She was stuck. No, she growled. She tried to back up, but the tunnel was too narrow. She tried to push forward, but the beam would not release her. She was wedged between metal and stone with no way to move. Behind her, Nari called out, Vela, what's wrong? I'm stuck. The words hurt her pride. My belt is caught on something. She heard movement behind her. Hyun's voice came from close by. Let me see. Can you shine your light back here? Nari redirected her light. Vela felt Hyun's hands examining the caught belt. His touch was gentle and careful, not fumbling or uncertain. I can free you, Hyun said, but you'll need to remove the belt. Can you reach the buckle? Vela twisted her arm back. Her fingers found the buckle and released it. The belt came loose. She felt Hyun manipulate something behind her, heard a metallic scraping sound, and suddenly she could move again. There, Hyun said. Try now. Vela pushed forward and slid free of the tight spot. Relief washed over her. She pulled herself into a slightly wider section of tunnel and waited for the others to catch up. When Hyun emerged, she looked at him. His face was pale and sweating from pain and effort. The burns on his skin looked angry and red even in the dim light, but his eyes were calm and focused. "Thank you," Vela said. The words came hard. She was not used to thanking humans for anything. Hyun nodded. "We're a team now. We help each other." They rested for a few minutes, then continued crawling. The tunnel seemed endless. Vela's arms and legs burned with fatigue, but every time she wanted to stop, she thought of Hyun entering that toxic chamber. If he could face certain death, she could handle some physical discomfort. Finally, they reached the secondary control junction. It was a small room filled with machinery and control panels. Hyun moved to the main console and began working immediately despite his injuries. Vela watched him work. His fingers moved over the controls with confidence. He knew exactly what he was doing. This was his domain, his expertise. Just as combat was hers, she thought about her years of training, the hours spent practicing with weapons and tactics, the pride she took in being strong and skilled. But Hyun had his own kind of strength. It was not about muscles or combat ability. It was about knowledge and problem solving. It was about staying calm when everything went wrong. "Got it," Hyun said finally. The console beeped in confirmation. "Life support is rerouting to our section. It'll take a few minutes to cycle up, but we should have stable oxygen within the hour." The Krovan technician sagged with relief. Nari smiled, tears running down her face. They were going to survive. Hyun sat down heavily, his energy finally running out. Nari immediately checked his injuries. "You should rest. You've done more than enough." Hyun nodded weakly. They settled into the junction room to wait for rescue. It was warmer here, and the life support hummed reassuringly overhead. Vela sat near Hyun, watching him rest. He looked small and fragile in the harsh light. His burned skin was painful to look at, but he had saved them all. This weak, soft, supposedly inferior human had kept them alive through courage and skill. Vela's entire worldview was crumbling. Everything she believed about humans was being proven wrong. They were not just careless and reckless. They were not just profit-seeking and dishonorable. They were people. Complex, capable people who could be brave and selfless and smart. She looked at her hands. Strong hands that could crush metal. Hands that had grabbed Day roughly in the marketplace yesterday. Hands that had been ready to hurt him simply because he was human. She felt ashamed. The group sat in silence as the life support system slowly restored their air. They had survived the worst. Now they just had to wait for rescue. But for Vela, something fundamental had changed. The human sitting across from her was not her enemy. He was the person who had saved her life, and she owed him a debt she could never fully repay. The hours passed slowly in the junction room. The machinery hummed around them, a constant background noise. The air was growing cleaner and easier to breathe. Hyun's repairs had worked. Nari had fallen asleep, exhausted from stress and fear. The Krovan technician dozed as well, his breathing deep and steady. But Vela could not sleep. Her mind was too active, processing everything that had happened. She looked at Hyun. He was awake, staring at the ceiling with tired eyes. The burns on his face had stopped oozing thanks to Nari's treatment, but they still looked painful. "You should rest," Vela said quietly. Hyun turned his head toward her. "I've tried. Can't sleep." He shifted position, wincing. "Too much adrenaline, I think. And the burns hurt." "I imagine they do." Vela was quiet for a moment. Then she asked him, "Why did you do it?" "Enter the chamber, I mean. You knew you might die." Hyun thought about the question. Someone had to. And I was the one with the best chance of succeeding. It seemed logical. That is not logic. That is courage. Maybe it's both. Hyun smiled slightly. Or maybe I'm just stubborn. We humans tend to be stubborn. Vela found herself almost smiling. Almost. "Yes, I have noticed this about your species." They fell into silence again. Vela wanted to say something more, but she did not know what. She had spent years hating humans. Now she was sitting peacefully with one, feeling something like respect. "Can I ask you something?" Hyun said. "You may ask. Earlier when we first met, you seemed angry at me. Not just professional. Actually angry. Why?" Vela's first instinct was to deflect or lie, but Hyun had been honest with her. He had saved her life. He deserved honesty in return. "I had a brother," she said slowly. "His name was Kren. 5 years ago, he took a job with a human mining company. There was an accident. The tunnel collapsed. He died." Hyun's expression became sad. "I'm sorry. That must have been terrible." "It was. But it was not just an accident. Vela's claws scraped against the metal floor. The company knew the tunnels were unsafe. They ignored the warnings because fixing them would cost money. My brother died because humans valued profit over safety, and then they covered it up. No one was punished. No justice was served. That's wrong, Hyun said firmly. That should never have happened. Whoever made those decisions should have faced consequences. But they did not. They used lawyers and paperwork to escape responsibility. It is what humans do. Hyun was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. Some humans do that. Some of us are corrupt and selfish, but not all of us. Just like not all Andraxians are the same. Not all Crovans are the same. Every species has good people and bad people, Vela wanted to argue. But the words stuck in her throat. Because she knew he was right. She thought of Thex, her commander. He was honorable and just, but she also knew Andraxian criminals and liars. Her own people were not perfect. I have been unfair to you, Vela admitted. I judged you before I knew you. I assumed you were like the humans who killed my brother. I understand why, Hyun said. Grief and anger are powerful things. They make us see the world in simple terms. Bad people and good people. Safe and dangerous, but the real world is more complicated. Yes, I am learning this. Vela looked at him directly. You saved my life today. You risked everything to protect us. That is not the action of a selfish or careless person. That is honor. Hyun looked surprised and touched. Thank you. That means a lot. Tell me about your world, Vela said suddenly. She wanted to change the subject, but she also genuinely wanted to know. Tell me about Earth. Hyun settled back against the wall. Earth is beautiful and terrible. It has blue oceans and green forests, mountains and deserts, but it's also been hurt badly by our mistakes. 200 years ago, we almost destroyed our own planet with pollution and climate change. I have read about this. The climate collapse. Yes, billions of people suffered. Many died, entire cities were abandoned. My grandmother lived through that time. She told me stories about when the food ran out and the rivers dried up. It was the darkest period in human history. How did you survive? We adapted. We learned. We changed our ways. Hyun's voice held both pride and sadness. It took generations, but we rebuilt. We had to because we had nowhere else to go. We couldn't run away to another planet. Earth was all we had, Vela thought about this. Andraxians had never faced such a crisis. Their homeworld was stable and rich in resources. They had grown strong without ever being tested by such catastrophe. That is why humans are so adaptable, she said, understanding dawning. You learned to survive when everything was against you. Exactly. We're not the strongest species. We're not the smartest. But we're good at solving problems because we've had to be. Every generation of humans has faced something that tried to kill us, and every generation found a way to survive. That is impressive, Vela said. And she meant it. Hyun looked at her with curiosity. Tell me about your world. About Andraxia. Vela felt a warmth in her chest. No human had ever asked her about her home with genuine interest. Andraxia has red deserts and crystal cities. The sky is orange because of the dust in our atmosphere. We have 2 moons. On festival nights, we light fires and sing old songs. It sounds beautiful. It is. I miss it sometimes. Vela surprised herself by sharing this. Space stations are efficient, but they have no soul. No connection to the earth beneath your feet. I understand. I miss Earth, too. The smell of rain. The feeling of grass. You can't replicate those things artificially. They talked for hours. About their worlds, their families, their dreams. Hyun told her about his work. How he loved solving mechanical problems and making systems work better. Vela told him about her training. Her pride in protecting others. Her desire to serve justice. She found herself laughing at one of his stories about a maintenance disaster that had covered an entire level in foam. She could not remember the last time she had laughed with a human. Or at all. Eventually, Hyun's expression grew more serious. Can I ask you something else? Something personal? Yes. If you could go back and change things, would you still hate me? When we first met, I mean. Vela considered the question honestly. I do not know. My hate was built on years of grief. It would not disappear easily, but I hope that I would at least give you a chance. See you as an individual instead of a symbol. That's fair. Hyun stretched carefully, avoiding his burns. For what it's worth, I never hated you. Even when you were cold to me, I knew you had reasons even if I didn't know what they were. You are very forgiving. Not always. but I try to understand people before I judge them." He smiled. "It's harder to hate someone when you understand their story." Vela felt something shift inside her, something old and bitter that had been lodged in her heart since Kren died. It was not gone completely. The pain was still there, but it felt smaller now, less overwhelming. "I think," she said slowly, "that my brother would have liked you." Hyun's eyes widened. "Really?" "Yes, Kren was always curious about other species. He wanted to learn and understand. That is why he took that job on the frontier. He wanted to see new things." Vela's voice grew thick with emotion. "He would have been ashamed of me, of how I treated you and other humans. He believed in judging people as individuals. Then he was a wise person. I wish I could have met him. I wish you could have too." They sat in comfortable silence. The rescue teams would arrive in a few more hours. But Vela found she was not in a hurry. For the first time in years, she felt at peace. Nari stirred and woke up. She looked around in confusion, then remembered where they were. "How long was I asleep?" "A few hours," Hyun said. "Rescue should be here soon." The Krovan technician woke as well. He stretched all four arms and yawned. "I had a dream we were eating real food. Not ration bars. Soon," Vela promised. "When we get out, I will buy you the best meal on this station." The Krovan looked at her in surprise. Vela was known for being strict and humorless. But she felt different now. Lighter somehow. They heard a sound in the distance. Metal grinding on metal. Voices calling out. The rescue teams had reached them. "Here!" Vela shouted. She activated her emergency beacon. The sounds grew louder. Tools cutting through metal. More voices. Then finally the bulkhead door groaned and began to open. Bright light flooded the junction room. Medical teams rushed in. They surrounded Hyun first, concerned about his burns. Nari protested that she was fine, but they checked her anyway. The Krovan was helped to his feet, and Vela stood tall, relief washing over her. They were safe. They had survived. As the medics worked, Vela caught Hyun's eye. He smiled at her and she smiled back. A real smile, not forced or fake. She had entered these tunnels hating humans. She was leaving as the friend of one. The medics carried Hyun out on a stretcher despite his protests. Vela walked beside him, refusing to leave his side. They had survived together. They were bonded now, whether she had planned it or not. "Officer Vela," one of the medics said, "Commander Thex wants to see you for debriefing." "Later," Vela said. "First, I am making sure my partner receives proper medical care." The medic looked surprised but nodded. They moved through the station corridors toward the medical bay. Other station personnel stopped to stare. Vela, the officer known for her hatred of humans, was personally escorting a human engineer to treatment. Let them stare, Vela thought. Let them wonder. She knew the truth now. She had learned it in fire. The medical bay was busy with injured people from the explosion. Doctors and nurses moved between beds treating burns and broken bones. The air smelled like antiseptic and medicine. Hyun was placed in a private room. The doctors worked on his chemical burns, applying special treatments that would help his skin heal. Vela stood in the corner watching. She refused to leave until she knew he would be all right. "He will recover," the lead doctor said. She was a Sarian with blue feathers and intelligent eyes. "The burns are painful but not life-threatening." "He was very lucky." "He was very brave," Vela corrected. The doctor looked at her with surprise. Everyone on the station knew about Vela's feelings toward humans. Hearing her praise one was unusual. After an hour, the doctors finished. Hyun was given pain medicine and told to rest. Vela finally agreed to leave when he fell asleep. She had her own duties to attend to. Commander Thex was waiting in the security office. He looked tired. The explosion had created chaos throughout the station, and he had been coordinating the response all day. "Vela," he said, "sit down. Tell me what happened." Vela gave her report. She described the sabotage, the explosion, their entrapment, and their survival. She did not leave out any details, including her initial hostility toward Hyun. Thex deserved the complete truth. When she finished, Thex leaned back in his chair. The engineering team examined the damage. Someone definitely sabotaged the thermal regulators. This was a planned attack. "The Purity Front?" Vela asked. "We believe so. Security teams have arrested 3 suspects. They are being questioned now." Thex's expression hardened. "They wanted to cause maximum casualties. If you and Hyun had not sealed that coolant leak, dozens of people in nearby sections would have died." Vela felt cold. She had been so focused on her own survival that she had not thought about the bigger picture. Hyun's quick actions had saved far more than just their small group. There will be a ceremony tomorrow, Thex continued. The station commander wants to recognize those who acted with courage during the crisis. You and Hyun will both receive medals. I do not deserve a medal. Hyun saved us. I was just there. You kept everyone calm. You led them through the tunnels. You protected them. Thex looked at her carefully. And you worked with a human without letting your personal feelings interfere. That took strength. Vela said nothing. She felt ashamed of her past behavior. A medal felt wrong when she had spent years treating humans with contempt. Dismissed, Thex said. Get some rest. You have earned it. Vela left the office, but instead of going to her quarters, she walked through the station. The commercial district was being repaired. Workers fixed damaged shops and cleared debris. Life was slowly returning to normal. She found herself standing outside the marketplace where she had confronted Day 2 days ago. 2 days. It felt like a lifetime. She saw Day at his shop inspecting damaged inventory. He looked tired and stressed. The explosion had hurt many businesses. Vela approached him. Day saw her coming and his body tensed. He probably expected more trouble. Merchant Day, Vela said formally. I wish to speak with you. Of course, officer. His voice was polite but wary. I owe you an apology. I treated you poorly. I assumed you were dishonest because you are human. I was wrong. Day's eyes widened in shock. I thank you, officer. That means a lot. Your record is clean. You run an honest business. I should have checked before I judged you. Vela hesitated, then continued. If you wish to file a complaint about my conduct, I will not contest it. Day shook his head quickly. No complaint. We all have bad days. I appreciate you coming to say this. They talked for a few more minutes. Day told her about the damage to his shop. Vela offered to help him file insurance claims and deal with station bureaucracy. It was a small thing, but it felt right. When she finally returned to her quarters, Vela felt exhausted. But it was a good exhaustion. The kind that comes after doing difficult but necessary work. She slept deeply for the first time in days. The next morning, the station held a ceremony in the main assembly hall. Hundreds of people gathered. The station commander, a distinguished Valerian with silver skin, stood at the podium. Yesterday, our station faced a terrible attack, the commander said. Terrorists tried to harm us. They failed because of the courage and quick thinking of several individuals. Vela stood on the stage with Hyun, Nari, and others who had helped during the crisis. Hyun's face was bandaged, but he stood straight and proud. Nari smiled nervously at the crowd. One by one, the commander called them forward. Each received a medal and a commendation. When Hyun's name was called, the crowd applauded loudly. Many people had heard about his bravery in the coolant chamber. When Vela's name was called, Hyun started the applause himself. She accepted her medal with dignity, though inside she still felt unworthy. After the ceremony, people crowded around to congratulate them. Vela noticed several humans in the crowd. They looked at her with respect instead of fear. It was a strange feeling. Day pushed through the crowd. Officer Vela, I heard what you did. Incredible. Thank you, Merchant. And Hyun. Day embraced the engineer carefully, mindful of his injuries. You are a hero, my friend. Hyun looked embarrassed. I just did what needed to be done. That is what heroes always say, Day laughed. Vela watched their friendship with interest. These humans cared for each other. They supported each other. They were not the cold, selfish creatures she had imagined. Over the next few weeks, things changed on the station. The investigation into the Purity Front continued. More arrests were made. The terrorists had planned attacks on multiple stations, but security forces stopped them. Vela volunteered to testify at the trials. She spoke about finding the sabotage and about the attack's consequences. The terrorists were sentenced to long prison terms. Hyun recovered from his burns. The doctor said he would have some scarring, but nothing serious. He returned to work in the Environmental Systems Division. Vela found herself spending more time with him. At first it was professional. They wrote reports together about the incident. They gave interviews to station security, but gradually it became more than that. They started eating meals together in the station cafeteria. Hyun introduced her to human food. She taught him Andraxian combat techniques. They talked about everything: politics, philosophy, their hopes for the future. Other station personnel noticed. Vela, the officer who had hated humans, was now best friends with one. Some people whispered. Others were inspired. One day, a young Andraxian security officer approached Vela during her patrol. His name was Rax, and he was new to the station. "Officer Vela, may I speak freely?" he asked. "Of course. I noticed you spend time with the human engineer, the one who was in the explosion." Vela felt defensive. "Yes, is there a problem?" "No, ma'am. I just wanted to say, it makes me think. I came here with certain ideas about humans, about how they are not trustworthy. But watching you work with Hyun, I wonder if I was wrong." Vela looked at the young officer. She saw herself from years ago, full of prejudice and certainty. "You are wise to question your assumptions," Vela said. "I was like you once. I hated all humans because of what some humans did. But hatred is easy. Understanding is hard. What changed your mind?" "A human saved my life. And in doing so, he showed me that I had been blind. Judge people by their actions, Officer Rax, not by your assumptions." Rax nodded thoughtfully and returned to his duties. Vela hoped he would remember her words. 6 months after the explosion, the station had fully recovered. New shops opened. The damaged sections were repaired. Life moved on. Vela was promoted to senior security officer. Her work during the crisis had proven her value. But she knew the real reason for her promotion. Commander Thex wanted someone who could bridge the gap between species. Someone who understood that cooperation was stronger than division. She accepted the promotion with pride. One evening, she found Hyun in the engineering bay. He was working on a new atmospheric filtration system. His hands moved with practiced skill over the machinery. "Working late?" Vela asked. Hyun looked up and smiled. "Always. This new system should improve air quality throughout the station. Want to help?" "I know nothing about engineering. I will teach you." "Hand me that wrench." Vela picked up the tool and passed it to him. She watched as he explained what he was doing, breaking down complex ideas into simple terms. "You are a good teacher," she said. "You are a good student, and a good friend." Vela felt warmth in her chest. Friendship. Yes, that was what this was. She had a human friend. If someone had told her this 6 months ago, she would have laughed in their face. But now it felt natural and right. "Hyun, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you think people can really change? Fundamentally, I mean. Or do we just hide who we really are?" Hyun set down his wrench and thought about the question. "I think people can change. It is hard and it takes time. But it is possible." "You changed, did I? Or did I just discover something that was always inside me? Does it matter? You are not the same person who grabbed Day in the marketplace. You are not the same person who looked at me with hate. You grew. That is what matters." Vela nodded slowly. "I hope you are right. I hope my brother would be proud of who I am now. I think he would be." They worked together in comfortable silence. Vela handed tools to Hyun. He explained each step of the repair. It was peaceful and satisfying when they